Welcome back, everybody. Today we're checking out this little pistol that you see in my hands and that you guys saw me shooting throughout the intro. This is the Smith & Wesson Shield 2.0 Performance Center version. So as of filming this video right now, they just introduced their 4-inch models and their optics ready models. However, when I ordered this one, I think back in January, those were not available. So this was like the newest, hottest, latest and greatest Smith & Wesson M&P Shield 2.0. So we're gonna get into all the details of it today, and I figured we'd do it out here on the dock with this beautiful background, a little bit nicer than what you're gonna see with a green screen. So let's go through it detail by detail. We'll start here at the heel of the gun and sort of work our way up and forward. It does come with 2 magazines. One of them is going to be the flush fitting 7-rounder that you guys see here. Then they're also going to come with an 8-rounder that has a little grip extension on there. And those are the 2 that come with it from the factory. However, recently, due to the popularity of the Shield pistols, aftermarket companies have been coming out with extenders for them. And I think that's pretty important, and we'll get into why here in just a second. But you guys have probably noticed me using this one here from X-Tech, which comes with the extension as well as a lengthened spring. This one here is going to give you 10 rounds in the mag plus 1 in the chamber for a total of 11 rounds. Now, the reason I say that I think that's relatively important is there's a lot of folks that simply don't have a ton of firearms but want something they can conceal during the day and then perhaps throw on a nightstand at night. And a lot of people think that 8 rounds might not be enough, or even 9 rounds with the extension. However, bumping it up to 11 makes people sleep a little bit better with that decision. Got those extendos, homie. So I think it kind of gives it an advantage, I should say, in an all-around gun. Like, I just want to buy one gun, I don't want to buy a ton of them. And I think that extra capacity that works reliably, I should also mention, is something that's going to draw folks in, of course, for home defense and those sorts of things. A lot of folks want to run a rail light. And you guys can see out here on the front of the gun, there isn't actually a rail. And the reason for that is if they were actually going to add a rail, that it would actually be wider than the entire slide. So that's why they didn't include one. However, there are options out there. So the TLR6 from Streamlight is available. It's very, very popular. There's a ton of holster options for that as well. You're not going to get as much lumen output as you would with like a full-size light, but it's going to give you 100 lumens, which not terrible. 5 years ago, everyone would have probably said was plenty, but it's certainly better than nothing. I believe Crimson Trace actually makes a light for this as well. Not sure on the availability of holsters for that. So that magazine extension, I think, does give the gun some capability that a lot of folks probably wouldn't look at it initially with, but something to think about there for sure. Grip texture on the 2.0 is awesome. It's something I discussed in my original 2.0 video. Some people think it's a little bit too aggressive and they've complained that it irritated their skin. I've carried this gun inside the waistband as well as the original one and not had any issues with it. That said, if you have that issue, you just touch up the sides with a little bit of sandpaper and get it down to what you like. So in my opinion, it's better to be a little bit too aggressive out of the factory than not aggressive enough and you have to send it out to be stippled or something like that. Moving on up the frame, we'll get to our magazine release. It is on the left side as it comes from the factory. However, it is swappable, so you can put it over on the right side of the pistol should you choose to do so. However, it's not ambidextrous. It's going to be one side only, and some people may think of that as a con, as I've said in a ton of different videos here on the channel. For me personally, I believe that is a pro. Reason being, if you have ambidextrous safeties, what tends to happen is they stick out, of course, on the right side, and everything I say is going to be true just in the opposite for left-handed shooters. For me, a lot of times when I go to hit that mag release like that, it will actually be stopped by my hand on the opposite side of the firearm and it won't fully release. So that's why I prefer single side only, and you can set it up as you see fit. Obviously the mags do drop free. That's one of the big advantages of having those metal mags on there. Continuing on up, as of right now, when I'm filming this video, it is available in a thumb safety model only. So it's very unobtrusive safety. It's very positive on and off. However, me personally, I would prefer to see a model, and I'm guessing down the road we will see one, a performance center model without that external thumb safety on there. The slide lock and slide release lever on the pistol is very good. Some guns, folks like myself with larger hands, a classic example would be like a SIG P226. When we're actually gripping high up on the pistol, as most folks would recommend, we will get false slide lock or the slide will not lock back, one or the other, because we're actually actuating it with our thumb during the normal process of gripping and firing the firearm. However, with this, We don't get any of that. I haven't read any reports of anyone complaining of that. However, it has some texture on there, so that way you can easily push it up, get some leverage on there to lock the slide to the rear. Should you have like a double feed or something like that, you need to be able to strip and rip that magazine out. And then it has a slight little protrusion from the frame, so that way you can easily actuate it with your thumb if you're somebody who likes to do that rather than coming over the top. The next feature we're going to discuss is going to be the trigger, and it is one of the differentiating features between this Performance Center version and this one here, which is the original 2.0. If we kind of go in, you guys can see they're very similar. There's a couple differences. We'll touch on them as we go. The trigger is one for sure with the Performance Center model. So basically, when we take this pistol apart, we'll roll some photos in as we do it. What you're going to see is that all of the trigger mechanisms, points that contact are polished up. So they slicked it up in that regard. And pulling both triggers side by side, which I'll show you here in just a second. The reset here is shorter on this one. It's a little bit more tactile as well. So obviously the pistol is clear. We'll come in so you guys can kind of get a look at the trigger. So we have this a little bit of play in there, and then we hit a wall right here, and it breaks pretty darn clean. This one breaks right at 5 pounds on my scale, and you'll see there's no over travel because we have that over travel stop built into the actual frame itself. So smart on Smith & Wesson for that. The early M&Ps didn't have that. Once the slide cycles, we're gonna let it out and show you guys the reset. Very short, tactile and audible. I'm not sure if my lavalier mic picked it up, but again, it's very quick to work the trigger there, very predictable. Nothing really to complain about trigger-wise. Again, this is the original Shield. Same thing, we have the same amount of play. Then our break there, it's just not as crisp, and this one actually has more rounds through it than the Performance Center one does. And the reset, I'm not sure if you guys can see that, but it's not as crisp. Let's see if we can do it again. It's almost like there's 2 stages to it or something. So the trigger on the Performance Center is definitely better. One of the big differences in addition to that is, of course, that we have this porting up here on the slide. So while you see 3 different cutouts in the slide itself on the barrel, there's only 2 ports, one on the left and one on the right. That's so that way, as the slide is going back, of course, it has the ability to vent the gas along the way. Let's talk about ported slides. I have a full video on ported handguns. If you guys are bored out of your minds and you guys want to go watch it and see me shooting them at night from retention, all of that stuff, it's out there for you. But for this video, I'm just going to talk about it because I've done it a bunch in the past and kind of know the pros and the cons. So the pros of it, of course, is that you're going to have a touch less felt recoil. And if you guys go over to, I believe it's Julie Golub's page, if you go over there, she has some pretty good slow motion video at night, actually shooting them side by side on a split screen. And what you'll see is that the muzzle rise is a touch less as well. For most people, it's almost imperceivable. However, for somebody who's very recoil sensitive, it may be something that you really like, or for somebody who's very concerned with split times and those sorts of things, maybe something you like as well. However, the downside of it is, in my opinion, twofold. Number one, you are going to get more noise, so it's going to be a little bit louder. Number two, if you are shooting from retention, there is a possibility, depending on the ammo you use and your particular gun, that you could get some fragments from a jacket or something like that up in your face that could do damage. People will also say that they will feel burns shooting from retention. I've done it a bunch. I've never felt it, but however, I have seen little pieces of jacket impacted, like in my chin and stuff like that. And again, that's from shooting hundreds of rounds from retention, just testing the theory out. Make sure you wear eye pro if you ever do that. However, in real life, if somebody's up on you and you're trying to fire and hold them off, it's something to be concerned about. The odds of it ever happening in real life and actually doing any damage to you that would cause you to not be as effective in a gunfight is almost zero. So, is it a thing? Yes, possibly, again, depending on ammo that you're selecting, but is it likely? It's highly unlikely. People will also say that the flash when you're shooting at night will cause you to lose your ability to see at night. I'm going to tell you that's absolutely not true in my experience. Again, shooting thousands of rounds. I have a video on it. You guys can go watch it. It did not impact my ability to perceive things at night at all. One of the reasons that maybe is that on this gun, just like the 19C that I did that video with, the porting actually kind of comes out in a V shape. So when the actual flames are coming up like that, It's not where your eyes are actually focused. So it's sort of in your peripheral vision when you're shooting. A lot of people will report that they don't see it at all when they're actually shooting, but if you watch someone do it or if you watch them on camera, you definitely can see it. So it's something to be concerned with from that, but it also, again, has the advantage of slightly less perceived recoil and a little bit faster split times. So pros and cons there depending on what you are actually looking for. Just like the regular shields, the slide on the PC version, as well as the barrel and some of the internal components as well, has that melanite finish on there. So melanite, for those who don't know, is very similar to nitriding. It's a nitrocarburization process where it actually imparts that black color that you see on there that is not only very good looking, which it is, but it also does a very good job at corrosion resistance and wear resistance. Even if you get some wear that you can start to see, like we'll see here on our barrel when we pull it apart, that nitrocarburization process also rather impregnates those properties into the material below the actual colored surface. So it's an excellent process. It's definitely proven itself over decades in the tooling industry and now probably coming up in a couple of decades in the firearms industry as well. Up here on the top, we do have a loaded chamber indicator, so that way if you had the available light and you had a round in there, you'd be able to see it. We have slight serrations up here on the front of the slide that I think honestly are pretty pointless, simply because if you go to actually actuate the slide from them, you're going to run into this portion here on the frame that is a little bit wider, and hopefully you guys can see that right there. So if you go to actually use them, you kind of get stopped. However, the rear slides are awesome. They have that fish scale serrations. They're some of the best out there in the industry. M&P has always had that right from the start. Now the Performance Series pistols from the factory come with two different sight options. We have the 3-dot tritium night sight version here. However, they also offer it with a fiber optic front sight, front and rear sight rather, I should say. So that's up to you guys as to which model you want to go with. I went with the tritium simply because I like it a little bit better for defensive use, but that's a video for another day. Now for breaking down the pistol, it's pretty simple. We're of course going to not have a magazine in there. We're going to make sure it is unloaded. It is, as you guys can see here. At this point, you're going to rotate our takedown lever, and there's two ways you can go from here. So there's actually a little yellow sear disconnector inside here that you guys can see. I should be rolling in photos of it. If you pull it forward, you will not have to pull the trigger to disassemble it. If you do not do that, you'll have to pull the trigger, very similar to a lot of other striker-fired pistols. So we'll let the slide go home, pull the trigger, because I didn't want to take it down. And you guys will see there inside the frame that we have these beefy steel rails there on the front and the rear. We have some wear on there. That's just good, honest wear, and you guys will probably be able to notice from the pictures that if I actually cleaned it a little better, it would probably be easier. The sear surface there is polished, as is the trigger, where it interfaces with the striker release. So continuing on, we have our guide rod and spring. It is all metal. That's something I know a lot of folks like. If that's you, cool, good on you. And we have our barrel. Looking at it here, you guys can see we have a nice wide mouth there for feeding all types of ammunition. This gun has had zero malfunctions through approximately 600 rounds at this point. A lot of the hollow points we ran through it were HSTs, 124 grain, Gold Dot 147 grain, and 115 grain Fiocchi. Probably in terms of hollow point ammo, 100 rounds total. It fed it all just fine, as you'd expect from the M&P series. One thing I should also note about the ported barrel is that generally speaking, depending on the ammo, you're going to lose about 5% of velocity. Doesn't really matter, probably not in real life. Looking at the inside of the slide, you guys will see there's no machining marks. It looks very good. It's very well done. And one of the disadvantages, I guess you could say, from a manufacturer's perspective anyway, of using a melanite or nitrided finish is that any kind of machine marks are exacerbated. So even with that, we don't see them at all. We have our striker there and our striker safety that are polished up. Again, that's just part of what you get with the Performance Center package. Just a couple things to discuss here before we close the video out. We already mentioned reliability. It's been 100% reliable. I have, at this point now, 4 shields, I believe, in 9mm, and I have one in 40 Smith & Wesson. The only one that's ever had a malfunction was the 40 Smith & Wesson. All of my 9mm, this is probably the lowest round count on all of them, so I would say at this point they are a very proven design. If you guys look around the internet, a lot of other folks are going to echo that sentiment. The big complaint people tend to have about the M&Ps in general, as well as the shield pistols, is the trigger. On the original M&Ps, not the 2.0s, they had a very imperceivable reset, if not completely non-actual reset. They improved it with the 2.0s. The same is true here on the shields, and then the performance center here, like I talked about earlier, it's actually even better. That said, if you guys are really into like apex triggers and stuff like that, there's plenty of them out there for the M&Ps. That's one of the advantages of them, is that they're just very common, so accessories are everywhere. If you don't like the sight options, you can swap those out with the mag extensions like we talked about. Triggers, holsters, all that very available for this pistol. One of the, I guess, cons for it over the standard version of the 2.0 is that we have a little bit of an increased cost. So I think the MSRP is just over $600. If you look around on the internet, you can see these right around the $400 to $450 mark. So they're not inexpensive. However, if you compare them to some of the other offerings out there on the market, most notably, I guess, the Glock 43, it's probably its #1 competitor, I'd say. It's less expensive, and even the standard version of the shield, not even the Performance Center, comes with metal sights, whereas, steel sights, I should say, whereas the Glock 43 comes with plastic sights that are terrible, and I've talked about ad nauseum here on this channel. But yeah. Shields, very good guns. The 2.0s, I definitely love the improved texture. Like I said, if there was going to be an improve for this gun for me, the end user, I'd prefer not to have that thumb safety on there and not have to worry about training with it. So that's my take on it. If you guys have any other questions about the gun, by all means, let us know down below in the comments section. If you guys like this sort of evening on the lake type of setting, let me know as well. If you don't, if you want me to go back inside and put the camera right here so you guys can see every little detail while I'm talking, let me know as well. I'm open to it. But yeah, that's pretty much it. If you guys aren't subscribed here, make sure you go ahead and hit that subscribe button. If you are subscribed, you're not seeing at least 3 videos a week, make sure you hit that notification bell, because apparently subscribing to the channel isn't enough anymore to be able to be told when I put a video up, but I always put at least 3 up every week. And if you've done both of those and you're still not seeing it, make sure you sign up for my email list over at mrgunsandgear.com or over at my Facebook page under the sign up tab. That way I email out the videos of the week once a week. It's not a ton of emails, it's one email a week. And I also include some deals of the week as well that you guys may be interested in. So that's pretty much it. I should mention before I close it out, because I don't think I did request this from Smith & Wesson for this review. So they did send it out for the review. That's pretty much it, guys. Again, if you have any questions, let me know. And I look forward to hearing what you guys have to say. And I also look forward to seeing all of you in the next video.